Welcome to Network Capital, Sandhya. I can see your wonderful new book right behind you. Congratulations for its publication. And there has been some good news today, which I can't wait for you to tell the readers about. But we've been planning this for a while. I attended your book launch in person, really enjoyed the part of the discussion that we were involved in. And I want to start for your initial reactions, like how does it feel to hold your book in your hand? How are you?
I mean, it's one of those incredible things, right? Like a mine. Mine has got a little poof. Um, I never thought that I would write a book as of now. I've always written. I think many people in the network capital community are great writers. And it was a way for me to organize my thoughts. It was a way for me to keep up to date with what's happening in the world. So when I got this book deal last year, I wasn't necessarily sure I should take it because I didn't feel quite ready and I didn't think that I had a body of work that was strong enough. But as I spent the summer starting to think about it and pitch the different ideas to the publisher, I realized that kind of it came really naturally and really easily. So it was a year and a half ago, year and a half of writing. The research that we'd been working on, which is published in the book, but also now expanded and commercialized with everything that we do in my advisory company, Kaleidoscope. All kind of the pieces of the puzzle came together. And no, I still can't believe it. Think it's insane. I am happy that this probably is going to be one of many because I really enjoyed the process of writing and interacting with professors and the editor. So hopefully it is going to be something that I keep up and can keep doing. But we've now sold about 15,000 copies, and it's just been recognized by FT as one of the best summer reads. So I'm quite pleased with it. And I don't think I wrote the book just for myself. I wrote the book so if I had this book 10 years back when I was starting to get into sustainability, I think I would have been quite pleased and would have
Mhm.
had a much more realistic view of the world. So that's kind of who I fundamentally wrote for. So I'm happy that it's resonated.
Tell us a bit about your career and what got you into sustainability.
Think everyone will say they kind of fell into sustainability. um, uh, anyone who is deeply embedded in social impact or wants to make the world a better place thinks sustainability is just a subset of it. I've spent the past 10 years of my career working in large companies in either the corporate philanthropy side, the kind of sustainability corporate function side, or working in ESG investment directly with government. And that is what's captured in the book, but also that's in a nutshell how I got into sustainability because I studied pre-med. I was, the standard Indian student who had great grades and did pre-med. I got a full ride to McGill for pre-med. And I'm really happy that despite me not continuing into being a doctor, I found a lane that feels just as impactful for me. And so that was maybe the red thread. I always knew I wanted to be working with people or helping people, especially helping the underserved. And this is kind of my version of it at this stage of my life.
What is sustainability?
So it's a term that I think a lot of people are regressing and moving away from because of the political connotations. But to me, sustainability is how an organization or an entity maps its impact in the world, whether it's environmental impact, social impact, or governance related impact. So that's how I view sustainability. So it's a catch-all term and it's broad. And I think people are now moving away from the term sustainability into resilience. At the end of the day, it's responsible business. That's what it means to me.
Mm. Is that what your career has been about so far after pre-med? What did you do? Because I've bumped into you in various meetings here and there. Now we live in the same country, but that was not always the case.
Yes. So when I decided to leave pre-med and not kind of go into med school, I got into research and development tied to pharma. So that was my kind of entry point into business. And I realized then the impact that business could have if governed right when it comes to driving real change. So then I entered a competition called CEO for 1 month, which allowed me to shadow a FTSE 500 CEO. And that gave me a wider perspective on how this could actually turn into reality. So the different mechanisms of corporate philanthropy, but also how companies are governed in general when it comes to their impact. So that led to me doing public policy, labor market analysis, and kind of sustainability all in one package over 10 years, mostly in large companies, Novartis, Adecco, DP World, and I also did quite a meaningful stint in government, working in ESG investing and supporting special economic zones. So that the red thread has still been impact led, and I think that the lens has shifted maybe from kind of a one-to-one approach, which is what maybe I wanted to do as a doctor, to a much more holistic public policy led approach. But the crux is the same as to why I wanted to do it.
And tell us a bit about the shifts that you've observed in the sustainability space that you witnessed in your career so far.
It's a good question because I think we are in a big shift right now. And all of my kind of mentors and advisors in uni said that sustainability moves in cycles. There will be periods where human ambition in different means coalesces, and it will be something everyone wants to talk about. And then there will be phases where it gets incredibly difficult. And I think we are hopefully in a phase where it's going back into being a little bit more easier to talk about. And the first chapter in my book is actually called Coming of Age Loudly, the Teenage Years of Sustainability. And the reason why I call it teenage years is because I genuinely do feel that that's where sustainability is. It's been maybe 20 to 30 years of research. There's a good business case for sustainability. But now it's moving past just doing it at a company level to regulation, to now implementation and value creation, right? So the nature of the next wave of sustainability has to be purely value creation led. And when I mean value creation, I don't just mean from an impact standpoint. There has to be clear commercial sense. There has to be clear arenas for capital flows to enter into the green transition. So that's why I call it the teenage years. And it's messy, but it is needed for the maturing of the sector. And the reason why I said coming of age loudly is because sustainability has always been very politicized, always talked about, even if the crux of the research was not fully understood. So that's why I say loudly, because every single thing that the sector does is very publicly discussed.
I do feel that the name is excellent and the way it comes together, the phrasing, social setting, and the context has been set. By that logic, feel free to take a moment to answer if you like. Would you consider Tesla and SpaceX to be very sustainable companies?
it's complicated when you look at it from a company standpoint. I think their mission statement was always to be sustainable, right? And especially Tesla, for the longest time would be market leading in the EV space. So I don't think fundamentally these companies are not sustainable. But sustainability is beyond just the environment side, right? You have the social and the governance side. And I think that's where a lot of maybe the negative press has been around the governance, around the transparency. And I wouldn't say Tesla has been bad for the EV sector at all. It created it in many ways. But now handling what the global movement tied to EV is, it maybe needs a much more governed approach, as we've got, good competitors from India, good competitors from China. So that transition, I'm not necessarily sure they're handling quite well. But I would say from a mission statement standpoint, they are sustainable companies.
I think a lot of people will agree with you on that.
Yeah.
The clarification question. So when we talk about ESG, these words like G, the governance of the company or governance of the people who use products of the company, or how does that work?
So it's a bit of both, right? So it can be at different levels of where you need governance. For sustainability, it is viewed as a central function. So it's usually from a central standpoint, how you set up the governance from a top-down approach. So from a board standpoint, from an exec level standpoint. But I would say now, because of the maturity of this space, governance has extended to beyond that. It is extended to governing supply chains. It is extended to governing how you use tech and AI. So that's the next phase. It is the deepening of the top-down approach to look at both upstream and downstream. And most of the regulation that has come into play, both in EU as well as the UK, are tied to that. So it's not just the high level top down approach. Great, you do that. We expect a company to do that now. But how transparent are you when it comes to understanding how you work with suppliers, how you work with your clients, and kind of everything in between? So, as a whole, I would say it is top down, but the next stages are much more kind of intricate and design led.
Mhm. Tell me about the title of your book.
Oh, it's called Burn Bright, Build Slow. Okay, yeah. So the reason, how to build a just climate future, which is the subtitle, but the reason why I wanted it to call it Burn Bright, Build Slow was I wanted to ensure that we covered the human aspect of sustainability as well. So this book is a bit unique in how it's organized. So you've got three key themes, which is the human, the business, and the planet section. And Burn Bright, Build Slow will resonate across all of those three. But what I also did was I added a fiction portion. And I added it at the start and at the end of the book, kind of as a temporal braid, because the character, you see her name is Anaya, you see her when she's 32 years of age, and then you see her at the end of the book when she's 62. And the reason I did that is because it is very difficult to imagine how the world will look and the mistakes we've made or the changes in the architecture over 30 years. It's something very hard to comprehend. However, if you're following the journey of a person, right, and you can get what human decisions and changes happen in a person's life, it is much easier to follow. So I did it that way so that even if someone doesn't read any of the nonfiction and just reads the fiction, hopefully gets the crux of what I wanted to talk about, the change of architecture and the hopefulness. And if people choose to not read the fiction and read the nonfiction, they will also be able to understand the so what, or the reasoning behind how we can make that change. So I had to pick a bit of a fight with my publisher because they weren't sure about it, and it's not maybe the usual way to do it. But I'm really happy I did that, and I think it lends itself to the title of Burn Bright Build Slow. I don't want to give too much more away about what the fiction bit is, but yeah, it lends itself to it.
In a way, it talks about a personal revolution and a personal evolution. Maybe you can comment on that.
I agree. I think everyone fundamentally wants to be of positive impact to the world, right? Positive impact to their communities and positive impact to the people that they care about. But there's a general paralysis because of how news is perceived, how helpless a lot of people feel, because at the end of the day, you see the outcome, which is the heat wave. But what can you do as an individual person? You can swap out like plastic straws, but like, the biggest emitters in the world are corporations and some high net worth individuals. So there's a paralysis there. So the point that I want to make with the fiction is that there is a very clear anger to agency register that every single person can go through and figure out. And that's what this character explores, right? She knows she wants to do this. She doesn't necessarily understand her way of doing it, her way of creating impact.
Which is a very common struggle that many young people try and navigate.
Exactly. And this is it's very prevalent in what you do as well with network capital, right? Because the crux of should we utilize our skills because we're good at something versus can we utilize our skills to better the world? I personally don't think it's in conflict, but sometimes it can be, right? So that's the crux of it, because I don't want people to feel frozen, to feel paralyzed and feel like they can't have impact, which is because it's not true, right?
Absolutely. If you don't feel empowered, how can you tackle some multifaceted problem? So definitely the hope aspect of the book comes across quite clearly. It's also directed at many problems we face at a personal level, at a social, political level in our countries of origin, countries of residence, the world, the interconnection, all of that. It's a tricky time to make sense of all of it. And your book is an incredible attempt to try and make sense of it from sort of lenses. Do you want to talk about those lenses and perhaps how the nonfiction part is structured?
Yeah, of course. Firstly, thank you. That's really kind of you. So the business bit, which was the first section that I wanted to write, and has the most chapters. That is four chapters. I knew that that was kind of the body of work that I'd been working on, and the impact prism methodology, which is now kind of our core IP, which was based off of 5 years of research. It kind of is talked about there, and the wider thinking from a macro standpoint too. But the planet and the human section, I think, are quite important in their own right, because I try to distill the three lenses of human, business, and planet in such a way that regardless of your level of expertise, you could be an asset manager and you could come in and read the planet section and you'll find something for you. You could be an educator trying to upskill students on sustainability, and there's something for you. And if you're a business leader and you're building and designing products and services, there's something in it for you. And I approached it in a very gamified manner from a book standpoint, because I don't think this is a book you should read in one sitting. I think it's a book that you should read over a month or over a period of time, because there are moments when I was writing it where I felt, I was part of the problem when I kind of
In what way? Tell us.
strategy, right? So the crux of the sustainability argument is, if companies feel like they're extremely good at it, they're in a lot of cases more fragile than companies that feel like they are not as good at it. And
Mm.
that's the premise from an architecture standpoint that we've built a methodology on, but also kind of delved deeply into, because if you are truly transparent and you want to build the governance or the framing of being a sustainable company, there has to be a fundamental level of honesty that is circular in your thinking. So the most sustainable companies in the world are not necessarily the ones that have the best targets. They're the ones that are the most honest every single year with what they've hit, what they can't hit, and how difficult something was, right? And from a standpoint, like, I felt like I was part of, in many cases, the earlier age of making sure we communicated everything and not necessarily got into the weeds of the details of what we couldn't do, right? And I think a lot of companies struggle with that now because the performative side of sustainability is still quite powerful and needed, right? Because you need to be inspiring. It's
Mm.
like you said, being empowering is important. But when things get difficult, right, rather than it being binary as we got this right and we got this wrong, what I think people really care about is that the ambiguity and how you're handling that. That
Mm.
gives confidence for investors, it gives confidence for consumers. And I don't think that everyone expects every company to have this figured out. Whereas, so I genuinely think that maybe the old school and how I was trained was, let's talk about the things that we got right, and maybe let's kind of figure out what we didn't get right, and then talk about it after we get it right.
Right.
And that led into a lot of the greenwashing sentiment, is in, if every company is only talking about the things they got right, then that automatically lends itself to, are they greenwashing? Are they saying this because they want us to believe something different, right? From a consumer standpoint or a client standpoint. And I think that that's what I want to help change, because it's a complex problem. Most net zero strategies are 15, 20 years, right? So there has to be a foundation, but it is going to be a chain of people within the company that help implement that. So
Hmm.
if we view it just from a performative standpoint, we're not going to get it right. And that's when, the teenage years are going to be problematic, because the moment you look under the hood, you're like, well, this is not really right. This is not something that will stand up in front of an investor. So that's the crux of what I call the architecture change that needs to happen. And then there is a skill set change that needs to happen there too, right? On being able to think of two speeds, of being able to implement short-term things quickly, but also think about the risks long-term. It's something I think maybe in the curriculum of sustainability isn't quite baked in yet. So that's the framing of where I see that, I was maybe part of the problem and I was part of the schooling, and it's now also my responsibility, and of course leaders who are far more experienced than I am's responsibility to navigate that next phase.
Fantastic. It's such an important point. You made us all think about the two sides of having targets. If you don't have any targets, any target seems fine. And if you have a target, sometimes over-indexing can lead to other kinds of challenges people are wise to keep in mind. And you spoke about companies that are honest into, in many ways, the world than be companies who are over metrics. Can you maybe give an example? Can you perhaps, without naming, if you like, just elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, of course. And I think I talk about many companies in the book, and I always preface that this is not a bad actor. It's an architecture problem, right? So a couple of years back, and I think this is maybe still ongoing, because of the changes in the US and the term net zero and sustainability maybe being highly politicized. A lot of companies had to find a way to reshape how they communicate sustainability, right? And there was a lot of questioning about, oh, is sustainability dead? Is ESG dead? Should we do? Is something else that needs to be born from this? And what I've noticed is that,
And why, if maybe in your answer you can also weave in why there's so much pressure
yeah,
on these terms.
it became too politicized, and it's not just because of Trump. I think, I mean, even though he had a big impact, of course. I think that there was a short-term versus long-term view. So the short-term view, maybe if you purely look at it from an energy standpoint, fossil fuels, and how that was, backing up a lot of economies, and that the transition itself was going to be quite expensive. So why focus on the future? Focus on the now. Like if you just strip back the moral argument and the ED&I argument, that was one of the things that people maybe discussed the most. And so if I kind of come back to what companies did, the organizations that were maybe beyond just setting the targets and they had gotten the implementation right, they had changed their value chains as a result of it, and knew that there were going to be proactive regulations that they would get caught in, never really had much of an issue, right? Because they would, okay, we're not calling it a sustainability report, we'll call it a resilience report, or we'll call it something else, but it's still something we're going to do because it has actually helped us, not purely from a carbon emission standpoint, but for us to become a better company that is resilient in the
Mm-hmm.
future. The ones that weren't quite there, right, were still starting in their journey, panicked. And so if you were just having a conversation about we're going to set targets, this is our methodology, this is how we want to showcase that we're being a climate positive company, they started pulling targets, they started communicating things differently, and there was just a general element of, oh, should we not do this at all, like should we
Mm.
do this in a couple of years? And I think that unfortunately that is going to come back when the cycle comes to a point in which they can't do it anymore because regulation is going to hit them. And then they're going to have to go back and do it all over again. So the uh, the the learning that I
There's pressure
have,
from the shareholders as well, as you worked in
exactly,
large
right?
companies, so you know that's
Pressure from the shareholders to maybe not communicate it a certain way, to hide it in different departments, and if you had a lot of American investors, to make sure that you protected what was needed, but then didn't over communicate on it. So it's not necessarily purely that an organization didn't want to do it anymore. I think that's mischaracterizing them. So that in between portion was where all the kind of chaos ensued.
mm.
So you had changing of how people wanted to characterize sustainability. You had companies dropping targets left, right, and center without really naming it, and then they got caught in a bunch of bad press because if you're a large emitter of waste, or if you're a large water resource user, people watched that and journalists picked it up. So it kind of it created this, again, paralysis of, okay, we're just not going to do anything then for a little bit, because anything we say is getting caught up and is turning into a media cycle, and it's better for us to find a way to keep doing the bare minimum until we are allowed to talk about this again, right?
Mhm.
So that and I'm saying there were two sets. There were companies that already were like, okay, we're going to call this something else, but they were ahead of the curve. So this was kind of companies that were still nascent in figuring out what they were going to do. And that is still not entirely resolved. And it's still probably going to be something that organizations struggle with for the next couple of years. But the key issue with this is that if a lot of what we do in sustainability is long term and is built on foundations, so companies going back and forth and ricocheting is going to cost them a lot more money long term than having
Mhm.
a plan that was built over a period of time. And it's the same for everything, right? It's not just a
You
sustainability.
never
Yeah,
compound in a way. That's the case you're making. You
exactly.
build starting from zero or negative, two
Yeah.
steps forward, three steps back. Mm. Yeah,
So
thank you
I
for
was seeing,
articulating.
yeah, I was seeing a lot of companies that were, stuck in that first in between, especially when they were raising funds from U.S. companies and, yeah, large banks and things of that sort. So that it's an unfortunate kind of dent, but the reality is that it is a short-term dent, and they're going to
Mm.
have to go back in the future anyway. So it impacted a lot of organizations that were trying to build. So I would say that's maybe the one of, it's not really controversial, it's widely talked about, but maybe one of the things that I wish hadn't happened, and I think the community in general probably agree that, yeah, being penalized for trying to do the basics is difficult, right?
Mhm. Talk to us about young people if they contribute towards a shift in the mood. There are activists like Greta Thunberg who've made themselves pretty clear about what they. There are also these less famous young people that you might stumble upon in a book launch or a bookshop. Maybe they work for you. Has there been a shift in the mood? The polls seem to suggest that it does. But I'm curious to hear from the author.
I think they're more energized than ever. And they're more educated than us as well, because there are now degrees at an undergraduate level where you can study sustainability. When I did it, it was only at a master's, and later it was the structure of learning about sustainability was not advanced enough that it would be a standalone undergrad degree. So the anxiety is higher than ever, but the intent is there. I think some of the youngest people in our company are far more motivated than even me or our advisors day to day, and that really
Good
does.
job on hiring.
Right? Yeah, I think I want to say that we really lucked out. Like they keep us going, and the way they treat each other, I think, is probably more important than just kind of keeping us going. And we have a lot to learn because they come in thinking that no, this has to happen. So they don't really come in with the question of should we do it.
Mhm.
So and it's so reassuring to see because I've spent the better half of 10 years trying to convince people that this needs to get done. And they've come in with master's degrees, in some cases PhDs, being like, what? Why are we talking about if it needs to get done? Like I was trained to do it, so let's do it. And I think that that's what we need to create space for. We need to create space for them to be able to do that, right? And carry that notion. And I really don't want to break their spirit around the niceties of should we do it, should we not do it, this and that, because they don't view it as binary. They view it as a decision that has already been made, and obviously
Yeah.
that's the right choice. So I think we have a lot to learn from them. We have a lot to do to live up to them as well, because we have to create this space, the jobs, and also the sectors for them to have that and thrive. And that it is a difficult time right now for that. Like, the job market is extremely difficult. People are more educated than ever, and we're not having the best time when it comes to growth. So I don't know. I still feel the onus for us to be creating those good quality jobs for them.
Um, the second part of your book, the title is Build Slow. Building by definition has many perspectives. You can build a company that grows really fast, a company that can address a problem, be very good for investors, be very good for the environment. Ideally, you want all of them, but building slow in itself is a trade-off. So when it comes to building of any kind, there are multiple trade-offs. I know you make trade-offs as a founder of a company, as an author of a book, who's evangelizing a particular sets of perspective. So talk to us about these trade-offs when it comes to sustainability and entrepreneurship, the broader case that you're making of.
It's a really good question. I think about this pretty much every single day. And I think I've figured out that the trade-offs are should be viewed as a design thing, right? There
Mm,
is always going to be prioritizations of what needs to get done immediately and what can be done later. But because we are building globally, I have had to deal with the build slow in different phases. So I was born, raised in Dubai. Everything is really quick there, right? Everything just gets stood up quickly, and we'll figure it out after it happens. And I think a lot of kind of American startup founder mentality is similar to that. Whereas you've got European and kind of the UK startup ecosystem that wants to think through a lot before it gets stood up. right? And so every day we have to make decisions based on how we can move forward, right? And for me, that has been the learning. It's the first time I'm founding a company, and the I don't know. It's the term I put in my head is custodians of ambiguity because it sounds in my head real. We need to get the skill that I think leaders need, especially founders need, is how much of information is enough before I can make a decision. And the second thing is when I've made the decision, how married am I to that decision? So if it's the wrong decision, acting quickly is better. But so and I think every single founder has a different level of that. Sustainability on average probably needs a lot more data before you
Mm.
can make those decisions. But if you work in a tech company that is fundamentally more iterative, that at the decision action to decision kind of ratio is much shorter, right? So it's a balancing act, and it is extremely different per sector. So we don't build in deep tech quite yet. I know a bunch of my friends who do in healthcare and climate deep tech, and for them decisions happen over months, which we should probably do over a month. But if I talk to an average AI startup founder, they make that in hours. So I think it is extremely still sector dependent, and depends on how regulated what you're building is, like the frame of regulation that you're building under. So it is it's quite context driven, I would say, the decision bit. But the confidence I think that I've had to build is making decisions when I don't have enough information,
Mm.
which is completely anti my training in corporate, anti my training in working in government. Because unless I have good visibility, in some cases, like years of modeling, I can't make a decision because my decision is important and it goes out. That's the switch for me. And it's been a hard switch, still learning. But yeah.
Everyone is learned skill, but you're making an argument and one backed by lots of facts, experiences, observation, and a hypothesis for the future. So paint a picture for what does an optimistic future look like for somebody who's internalized the principles of future.
Ooh, that's very good. I I think that hopefully the book creates different avenues to create impact, right? And that I don't want people who have kind of understood the value set of the book and believe how I frame to be like, oh, be a sustainability leader or be an investor. That's not the point. I think the crux of it is that just like digital skills and maybe AI skills, I very much think the green skills and sustainability skills is a cross-sectional thing. I think you
Mhm.
need it across any job that you do, even if you don't have sustainability in the title. So that is what I want people to leave with, that they have got an onus to actually feel responsible in their roles, but also any role is a green role going forward.
Mm.
And that's the case I want to make, because I think that ultimately empowers you, right? That ultimately makes you think that, oh, I can do something. This is not a government problem. This is not a bunch of smart researchers in a university's problem. It's something that I can do tomorrow. And that's what I want, hopefully, people to feel, that they don't feel sidelined by it. And personally, that helps me not be paralyzed, and helps me make the next decision, right?
Mm.
Not the
Mm.
decision that will last 10 years, it's the decision that will help me get through tomorrow. And that's kind of the crux of why I wrote the book. And I'm now going and meeting people and doing a mini book tour and having these conversations with, slowly now, people have already read it, and that's
Mm.
what I'm now hoping to discover, to see what if that landed, or if there's something else that came out for when they read it. But that's my hope, that the anger to agency register. There is something you can do tomorrow, and then you should probably do it.
Mm. When you write a book, you essentially build a world. Other people come be part of it, and then they build their own mini worlds it in different ways. You will discover what it means when they say that a book takes a life of its own. will
I'm
happen or it
super
perhaps has already happened.
I'm super excited. And I've seen you you've written what, two now? Three? I can't keep track. And I've seen kind of how people react to your books, and it's just it comes through in how they care about the topics that you write, right? So I think that that's my hope in some small way, that people can come up with their own version of their truth and their ambition
Well,
based on.
given the number of copies sold and where all it's been featured, I think it definitely augurs well. But even if that were not the case, I think the book presents an important perspective that people should pay attention to. I just want to wrap up by you connecting your work, the company that you started, with the mission that you're putting forward in this book. How do they engage with each other? Do they talk to each other? Because knowing you, I can see that it's all part of, again, the broader world, the work, the writing, perhaps speaking, and other things. Usually that's the case that I find with interesting people.
Yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily think I did it in order of that, but
Oh yeah,
it,
that's I wasn't implying that.
yeah, and I think that that's the I don't think my brain works that way either,
Mm.
from a lateral thinking standpoint. And I think the book freed me to actually create Kaleidoscope, which is the name of the company, right? So we've been delivering from an advisory standpoint elements of that, methodology that I mentioned. It's called Impact Prism. And 3 months back, we realized that there is some legs from a product standpoint for this, because we've done enough of the iterations. So we now hope to scale it in a way with the machine learning platform, so that the core methodology, which is not just based on the book, it's like I said, based on 120 different indicators we've been working on for a while. That is also now going to be productized into a tool which we've just kind of pre-seed raised money for. And the view is that we want to build a resilient operating system. So what I mean by operating system is we've got events, convenings, and other interactions where we horizon scan, and we have those difficult conversations in the rooms that ordinarily wouldn't bring that set of people together. We've got the fundamental research baseline, which is Impact Prism, and the advisory is helping us keep the data fresh and make sure that the methodology is beyond just methodology. There's live tooling and live insight into it. And then the machine learning platform is, of course, going to be a bit more sector led to start off with, is going to try and repeat what we've done in a much more condensed kind of user face format, so we can drop the price, right? And we can reach more people. So I've always wanted this to be for mid-market or small companies, and I think that they can think about sustainability in a much more freer manner than a large company. So that the resilience ecosystem you want to build is that at any stage of where you are in the sustainability journey, you can join, and you can help and you can support, with the view that this will inspire maybe a new generation of companies to think about sustainability beyond just compliance. So that's the world. I will check back in with you in 6 months to see if we are doing that the way I think we can. But I'm really lucky. I love my team, and we've got a good set of universities helping us too. So it's no longer just a mad girl with a book. So let's see.
Although even if that was the case, it's a great start, and I met some members of your team really energized. Is there anything I should have asked you about the book, about the company, about the process of writing it that I didn't, or any other parting message that you have for our listeners, viewers?
Oh, it's a good question. I think you asked very thoughtful questions, and I'm really grateful. So thank you for having me. What I'd say is a lot of this activism writing for me started on social media. And it was bits and pieces that kind of formulated, and then the writing maybe happened about 5 years ago, and I got more comfortable with writing. But I think it's a surprising. It was a great starting point for me. So I use social media as almost like a mini diary of different lenses from an impact standpoint.
Hmm.
So I get this question a lot, that people like, I don't think I have the capacity to write a book. I don't think I have the capacity to put out a paper. It really doesn't have to start that way, right? It
Hmm.
can start in a channel that you feel you can communicate best, and that will translate. So I think I want to leave people with that, as in, yeah, whatever you're using right now, use it from an impact standpoint, and that's a good place to start.
In other words, burn bright, build slow. Sandhya, thank you very much. Thank you for writing what you did, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Utkarsh.